Hi, I'm Lorna McPherson. I'm a dairy consultant and ruminant nutritionist with SAC Consulting. Today we'll hear from Rory Christie, who farms at Dewry Farm just outside Port William on the west coast of Scotland. Rory Christie is a dairy farmer with well over 1,000 cows. It's a spring block calving herd which he runs on an extensive grazing system. Rory's been using multi-species swards here at Dewry Farm for over 2 years now, and today we'll hear from Rory about the benefits he finds with the multi-species swards, how he uses them and how they fit into his dairy system. So what are the nutritional benefits of multi-species swards over perennial ryegrass swards? Well, generally they can have a slightly higher protein content, and this is true in swards that will have a high level of clover, both red and white clover, but also lucerne as well. The other benefit of multi-species swards is that some of the species tend to have a lower NDF or fibre content, meaning they're slightly more digestible with a higher metabolizable energy content. And this would refer to chicory and also the clovers, red and white clover. Other nutritional benefits is a higher level of minerals as well. Certain herbs and species will have higher levels of some of the trace elements that are really important for livestock health and production, such as copper, zinc and selenium. And this means that it can reduce the amount of supplementation required, but always take nutritional advice on levels of supplementation when feeding livestock on multi-species swards. When it comes to animal performance, we tend to see improvements in daily live weight gain in beef cattle, in dairy heifers and also in lambs. And some trials have shown that lambs have got to slaughter on average 2 weeks earlier when being grazed on multi-species swards. There are also improvements in milking performance in dairy cows. This is partly down to the improved energy content of the swards, but also due to an increase in dry matter intake. Across several studies, the average increase in milk yield has been 1.2 kilos, and there's also been an increase in total milk solids produced as well. However, one of the downsides might be a slight reduction in milk fat percentage due to the lower fibre content of some of the species included in the multi-species sward, and also the higher energy content driving milk production, and so we've got a slight reduction in butter fat just because of that dilution effect. Multi-species swards can improve overall dry matter intake, and in dairy cows an increase of up to 1.6 kilos of dry matter has been reported in some trials. When grazing young stock, and whether that's beef cattle or replacement dairy heifers, when they're on multi-species swards, we tend to see more even growth rates throughout the season, with maybe less of a surge in growth in May, but improvements in growth rates later on in the season. This gives a great opportunity to extend the grazing season. However, some species, particularly herbs, are very susceptible to damage from poaching, so it is important to manage grazing carefully in the shoulders of the season to prevent damage to the sward and improve the persistency of certain herbs. So multi-species swards have proven to be beneficial for growth in young stock and also in milking cows to improve milk output and milk solids. But are they useful for grazing dry cows? Well, I'd certainly recommend not grazing dry cows on multi-species swards, and the reason for that is that because they have quite a good energy content and often on average slightly higher energy than perennial ryegrass, the risk with grazing dry cows on multi-species swards is that they gain too much energy and put on condition over the dry period. So if they are to be in multi-species swards, the cows should be kept very tightly to limit their dry matter intake and provide other low quality forages for them to fill up on, such as straw, hay or low quality silage. High levels of lucerne in a mix may also be a problem for dry cows because lucerne typically has higher levels of calcium than perennial ryegrass, and that could potentially increase the risk of milk fever.
Hello, I'm Rory Christie, and my business is called Dewry Farming Company Limited, and we are dairy and pig farmers. On this occasion we are talking about our dairy farming practices, and we're pastoral farmers, so we run a spring block grazing herd, much like you would see in New Zealand, and we have grown a herbal ley which we use in our regular rotation for feeding the dairy cows. This is an off-the-shelf herbal ley bought from a regular agronomy company. So this field last year, 2022, was in grass. Prior to sowing it in the herbal ley, we pan busted it, or sward lifted it, whatever you want to call it. But basically we're dealing with the compaction. We then sprayed the field off with glyphosate, and we direct drilled the seed into it a fortnight later using an earth drill to ensure we get the right spread of seed. We cross drilled the field, and then the first time we grazed it was 6 to 7 weeks after sowing. We sowed it in the start of June. We're now in the start of September, and it's had 3 grazings. This is the second time I've grown herbal ley, and this time it's been more tricky because the weather dried up in June. I think it suffered from drought a little. Interestingly, the herbs survived no problem, and it's actually the ryegrass I think that struggled with the drought conditions, because we've had more annual meadowgrass appear in this field than we would have liked, but the herbs are pretty strong. So to make a herbal ley be successful, there's a few key things you have to do. You certainly want to have your pH as close to possible as 6.7, and you have to have good P and K indexes. This field has both of those. We did apply lime. We've been on a programme now for several years to get the pH to 6.7. We applied calcium lime, and we went from 6 to 6.5, and the last push is to get to 6.7. The entire farm is mapped, so the lime is put on variable rate, and the K, if we put K on, we tend to use potash plus, and it's done with variable rate too. But we're very lucky and have plenty of slurry, both a small amount of pig slurry and a large amount of cattle slurry. So all our fields get, the grazing fields get an annual application of cattle slurry, and anything that we silage gets 3 applications. This field has had no bagged nitrogen and won't get any. So the first year that we grew herbal ley, we were a bit worried about how it would handle having 600 cows coming in and grazing it down, and would we have to protect it, not graze it in wet weather, and so on. But in actual fact, that's completely impractical, and it has to just be treated exactly the same as the grass you have in the sward. So we now graze it in order. We measure the grass twice a week, and that tells us what's at the top of our grass wedge. So at the moment we're on a 24-day round, so every 24 days we'll come back to this. On first grazing, you have to certainly make sure that the plantain is beyond 5 leaves, because if you don't do that, then you'll damage the plantain and it won't be as successful. It does appear to measure very similarly to grass, and we have found that the cows are quite satisfied on it. This time, because of annual meadowgrass, I let the crop get bigger to an entry cover of about 3,500. And guess what? We had to put the cows back to it because they left a huge residual, and we had to put them back. So yeah, our September entry cover we're going for is 3,100 kilos per hectare. So next time it reaches that, that's what we'll do. We'll go in at 3,100. You might ask why I've planted such a thing. I have got 450 hectares of grass in our milking platform between that and silage support. I am simply trying to learn to find out if it can bring benefit and if it can help protect us from the negative impacts of global warming. Can it be a drought-resistant crop? And it is. There's no doubt that the herbs are able to deal with dry weather better. I also wanted the taproot of likes of the plantain to help with compaction. So it's about getting water in and getting water out. There's a biodiversity thing going on as well, because these plants flower And so we're actually hoping to improve the biodiversity, insect life, and the soil biodiversity. And we have dug trial plots, and though it's no statistically accurate, it's simply anecdotal, there was a higher worm count in the herbal ley soil as opposed to straight ryegrass. Saying that, there was still a good worm count in the ryegrass, the sward. So there's everything going on: biodiversity, global warming mitigation, and most importantly, we think it will actually make the cow's milk better. Anecdotally, we're getting 1 litre to 2 litres a cow more when fed the herbal ley. Why is that? Probably because it's got a higher protein count in the diet. You know, the clovers are high protein. It is said that the plantain has a diuretic effect, and so that makes the cows drink more water. If they drink more water, they make more milk. And the other thing, of course, is we actually are delivering a low nitrogen strategy, low nitrogen farming strategy, and the clovers are fixing nitrogen from the atmosphere, so we can reduce our purchased nitrogen that's coming into the farm in a bag. Traditionally, we used to buy 300 tonne of nitrogen a year, and now I'm buying about 100 to 115. So through everything we've done around managing the soil better, managing our swards better, we've really significantly reduced our nitrogen use. We use about 120 kilos per hectare of purchased nitrogen, and I hope to drop that further. I won't ever be zero unless paid to do so. I like to think we are biological farmers, and we use the best of science and the best of organic farming to create a system that is truly sustainable. Will the farm be completely covered in herbal ley in the future? The answer to that at the moment is I don't know. I don't think it will be in pure herbal ley, but I think that I already have got red and white clover throughout most of my swards. We have plantain in 25% of the dairy sward, and I suspect that we will have 100% red, white and plantain within 3 years actually. The place for a full-blown herbal sward, I'm not sure yet what that is. I don't think it has got longevity. Our original plot, which we planted in 2020, is now basically ryegrass, red clover, white clover and plantain, and a small amount of chicory and a small amount of the other herbs. But I don't think there's longevity in it. I don't think it will last much more than 5 years. My top tips for growing herbal ley would be: burn off your grass field with glyphosate. Consider letting it grow back and doing it again. Then you will get good weed management. But don't even consider doing it unless your pH is above or around 6.5 and your P and K indexes are above 2.